Alright, I got another one for you today on this Thursday. Story time about Rogue Cheney, the Shadow Dragon Slayer. So a long, long time ago, in a land far away, as they say in the fairy tale, right? Um, there was a guy, or this boy, his name was Rogue. He was orphaned because his parents had died by dragons. Now this little boy, was gonna become a dragon slayer. He studied under the shadow dragon Skiadrum. Skiadrum was the shadow dragon, and he taught him shadow dragon slaying magic. Hence why he's a shadow dragon slayer. Now, he's special, different than Natsu, Wendy, and Natsu. Him and Sting, right, are third generation dragon slayers. Because, like, when they were introduced, it was, later in the series. That's why they're third generation dragon slayers. But they came from 400 years in the past, and they were taught by those dragons. They were sent into the future, but when they were sent into the future, their dragons lay dormant inside of their, stomach, right? But they put magic on them. These two dragons called Skiadrum, this dragon that taught Rogue Cheney, he said, or he put the spell on his mind and said, hey, guess what? You did kill me. You slew me and became a true dragon slayer. So Rogue believed that he killed his dragon. And he was a true dragon slayer because dragon slaying magic slayed dragons. And he slayed the dragon that taught him magic. That's what he believed for a long time. And Sting did as well. But they went in different directions than Natsu and Gajio and Wendy when they first appeared, right? But they then were, living their lives and shit, And they were like, oh, Natsu and Gajio, he took to Gajio's ways. Because Gajio was kind of, dark and more, badass than Natsu was, right? In the eyes of, Rogue. And he was like, yeah, man, I want to be like him. And he was like, let's, not be like them, his friend. He's like, let's beat them one day and become true dragon slayers. And, years passed, and after Tundra Island, those boys grew up to be young men, and they entered into the Grand Magic Games as twin dragons of Sabertooth. Now, these two Rogue ended up fighting against Natsu and Gajio. He was fighting against Gajio at first, because he always wanted to fight against his, the person he idolized and looked up to. And he was doing all right. He used his shadow drive, which is what he called his dragon force, right? Because he also had a dragon slaying lacrima put inside of him. This orb that holds dragon slaying magic. So it was extra dragon slaying magic. So it looked like he had Gajio and Beard. But Gajio went through some training before the Grand Magic Games of his own. Not the same shit Natsu did, but enough to, catch Rogue off guard. And he was like, damn, okay, this is going to be a fight. He was just seeing what I could do. And after that, he he had he went on to fight Natsu because Gaji was taken out of commission, out of the fight. Not because he was weak or anything, Natsu tricked him, sent him down a mine shaft. So then he was fighting against Natsu with Sting. It became a 2-on-1. He ended up being defeated by Natsu. Later on, there was a future Rogue arc after that, right? So let me talk about another rogue. I know this is gonna get kind of confusing a little bit, but there's a rogue who came from like 7 years in the future, and this is, future rogue, right? This guy, um, he killed Sting and took his white dragon slaying magic for himself, so he became the White Shadow Dragon Slayer. Came back in time to get revenge on the humans, but also to defeat Acnologia. And prove that he's the best dragon slayer of all time. Now, he was doing some things at first. He had him fucked up for a little bit. He killed Lucy, who also came back in time to warn of, what the fuck he was gonna do. And he ended up killing that Lucy. That sent Natsu into a rage. Natsu ended up fighting against Future Rogue and losing that fight. The first time, right? But then he left and he summoned 7 dragons from the Eclipse Gate because he had the queen, or not the queen, but the princess, Hisui, tricked the girl and said, hey, save your kingdom from Acnologia and Zeref? Do this, open the gate and it'll be cool. And to some degree, I guess he was right, but not really, because he had his own plan. He had his own agenda around it, and that's what it really was. So he was going to control the dragons to kill all the people who were involved with that. He was finding Gray too. Gray was the one who sent him down that dark path, because Frosh, his cat, ended up dying because Gray killed it in his timeline. But that sent him into depression and other things because he lost his cat. That was his friend, his everything. And then when he lost his cat, he went crazy. He flipped the script. But there was also the original timeline's rogue, right? The one who fought against Natsu and Gajio, days before. He was fighting against Gajio on the last day of the Grand Magic Games, right? But when he was doing this, his future energy, the energy from his future self, he used a certain spell to project himself over there and take over the current rogue's body. Because at first he was losing to Gajio. He was taking that aspect of him. But then, his future self came over and was like, hey, let me help you out. You'll be a true Shadow Dragon Slayer after I help you out. And he was, he was, dealing Gajio damage. And Gajio was like, you're not the same guy. You're being possessed. He's like, but I am the same guy. And he technically wasn't wrong. He was being possessed by his future self. So, who was more evil and shit, right? And Gajio could sense that, and he was like, I'm gonna pull you out of there, because his name's not Rogue, his name's Laios, because Gajio remembered some things, a little bit. He was like, that's my sworn brother Laios, and I'm gonna get him back to normal. You can't tell me who he is. He ended up, Gajio ended up defeating Rogue, right, in the Grand Magic Games. And the future Rogue, after the Grand Magic Games was open, he summoned all the dragons from the Eclipse Gate. And he was attacking Fiore and Mercurius, which is the main capital of Fiore, right? 7 dragons came out the gate. So each dragon slayer that was present in the series up until that point, Loxus, Cobra, Natsu, Gajio, Windy, Sting, and Rogue were all fighting dragons. Natsu fought against Future Rogue, who was fighting on a dragon named Mother Glare, and he was controlling. Future Rogue was controlling all the other dragons. Like, yo, do my bidding. We'll go and kill Acnologia, the woman, because they knew who Acnologia was from 400 years ago, and they were like, yeah, we said that human sounds cool. What will he cost to him? And he was using that type of dragon slaying magic, but he was also fighting Natsu off and fending him off and shit. Natsu actually had to get a power up to fight against this nigga and shit, the Future Rogue. Now, the current Rogue was gonna get killed off by Old Tier. Old Tier was like, hey, I need to kill him in order to kill this future self, because if his you know, past self don't exist, then he don't exist either. But then she remembered what Natsu said. She said, no, this rogue never did that shit that the future rogue did. He ain't gonna go down the same path. You wanna take that from him? You can't take that from him. You gotta let him live his life. That might be true what that rogue did, but that's not the same person. They come from different fucking timelines. They went through different fucking things. Then the bitch was like, okay, you know what? He kind of has a point. I can't do that. She ended up using it, her lost magic, time magic. And she like reset the world for 1 minute. Everybody, went back 1 minute, and they got to see 1 minute into the future because of her magic. And that actually helped Rogue, the regular Rogue, fight against the dragon he was fighting. He was fighting against a red dragon, but then he swapped dragons with Sting, and he fought against, Rogue was fighting then against a water dragon. He defeated it, like, fucked it up a little bit. Not outright, because it was still getting up, but then the magic disappeared because the cliffs get closed, and the dragons went back to 400 years in the past. Now, Rogue was gone for a little bit because Tardos was happening, but he came back into the city because he needed to save Minerva. She became a demon. He's like, damn, girl, what the fuck? That's low key his bitch. I ain't gonna, that's low key his guy. But, and he's like, but he like liked her as a guildmate and shit too. He's like, my lady, you need to come back. You kind of like were one of the like people in the guild. Like, you ain't weak or anything. You're not a liability or shit. You actually had us, working to be better, like, because at one point she was more powerful than them, and they're like, you gotta come back and shit. You still, cool. And she was like, I don't know. You will never take me back and all this other shit. And then her father appeared because Margier turned him into a demon. And they were like, oh shit, you killed him, but he come back. he told, Sting, his friend, he was like, yo, I thought you killed him and shit. He's like, yeah, man, I thought so too. And he came back as a demon. He's like, I don't care about all that shit, man. I'm power. That's all that matters. I'm the most powerful demon that's, and he ended up getting dismissed by Sting and Rogue. Sting ended up fighting him, and Rogue ended up fighting him. They got, he was dismissed. He was giving them some fits at first, but then they like locked the fuck in. And they took care of business. Now, the next time they come into the story was when Alvarez attacked. Everybody came to Fairy Tail's aid because they knew of Alvarez's from. That was another continent, like another country going against another country, that type of thing. But they were coming there to like take what Fairy Tail had. So they all convened in that area in Magnolia, the city of Magnolia, where Fairy Tail is. Like Sabretooth went there, which is the guild that Rogue's a part of, and then like Lamia Skill and Blue Pegasus, all these other people came, right? To help Fairy Tail out. Because like basically the whole nation of, Alvarez, came to fight on behalf of Zero. Because in their, kingdom, he was their king, basically. So they did that. They were there for the invasion. They fought against a guy named Bloodman. And this guy had curses just like the 9 gates of purgatory. Or not the 9 gates of purgatory, but the 9 demon gates from Tartaros. Demons from the Book of Zero. And this guy had like, he fucked them up. He put them, he crucified them, had them all strung up, fucked up. And Gajo saw that and he was like, God damn, I wasn't there for them. He was pissed. But he ended up handling Bloodman, not easily, but, defeated him. Sting was like, God damn, I'm the leader of Sabretooth and I couldn't fucking win. And Rogue was feeling his pain. He was like, God damn, we got fucking beat. They had to make a comeback. So what they did was, they met Arcade, who was actually one of the more powerful members of the Spriggan 12. He was putting people to sleep, like, for real. Eternal rest, basically you die. As soon as you close your eyes, you're dead, that type of thing. because he had that kind of magic. He used white light magic. You know, he was basically a white light demon. He was created from um, Natsu DNA and his son, or Zeref's son August, his DNA. They both, he was powerful. He was designed to take down Acnologia and put him to sleep and put him to rest. But um, like they were falling asleep and shit, but they were also getting lustful desires and shit too. Having pleasureful feelings and shit. He was like, "Yo, man, I don't know, because Rogue's more like, I don't know. He kind of puts himself aside a little bit. He don't mind letting Sting get all the shine. So he's like, hey man, take my Shadow Dragon Slayer magic and add that to you, so you become a white dragon, a white Shadow Dragon Slayer, real quick. But like, if you hide inside of my shadow, you won't go to sleep because he can't fuck with you in that. Like, he can't fuck with you if you're a shadow." And he was like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he gave his powers away to Sting. After they defeated Arcade, Sting did that, and then Rogue was like, "Yeah, man, use my power to do that." But cool. Um, they ended up getting called by Acnologia, and they were put inside of Lacrima crystals. And Natsu was like, "Hey, man, you ain't gonna let him take away your power just like that. You ain't just gonna like lie down and let him like steal your shit, are you?" And they're like, "Fuck no, man, we're here with you." And they all stormed his ass. They all, ran that fade with Acnologia, but he was still beating their ass. He was still he dismissed all of them like they were like, man, garbage. But then Natsu, took, Rose energy and everybody else's, and defeated him, heavy plot armor on that shit, because that animal was not weak at all. And basically that's the end of it. I know in 100 Years Quest he shows up a little bit, but just know that Rogue is the Shadow Dragon Slayer. He's best friends with Sting, and his other best friend is Frosh, who was his ex-lead. He had a counterpart from the past that came, or from the future, my bad, that came from, the future to the past to try to fuck shit up. But then, it showed like, hey, man, you understand that that's not the same person. It's the same person, but they did different things. They didn't follow the same fucking, like, life path. And it basically ended up being true because he ended up helping them fight against Alvarez in the end. But Rogue ain't a bad character. Watch Fairy Tail and you might like him. You Shadows and other things. But he kind of like sidelines himself a little bit and other things. He's kind of more reserved. But like, he ain't weak or anything. You know, he ain't complete dog water. I wouldn't say he's more powerful than Great. I wouldn't say that Sting is either. But they're kind of like around his level a little bit, like right below him. I wouldn't gas him up past Great. I wouldn't say Great, loses to the likes of them. But be cool on the corner and let me know what you think in the comment section.